Hello, a warm welcome and good morning to our Climate Talk #1 of Season 2 within our IJP Digital Dialogue series. Last week we had already started the new season, but due to technical problems in the capital for our speakers, we had to stop the meeting at its very beginning, and therefore, welcome to our experts as well. You are a real startup in a real startup pole position today. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time for the next 60 minutes and discussing with us the topic startup as drivers of sustainable economic transformation. Before we get into the gist of the call, one housekeeping remark. Our meeting will be recorded and it will be available on our website by next week. In addition, we do a written summary and that will be available as well. And yeah, tuned up with a few design or illustration aspects. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat and I'll pick them up and refer to our experts. I'm Martina Johns, Director of the Asia program, but also responsible for the climate talks and the Science Communication Lab. So the war in Ukraine shows that Europe really needs a sustainable transformation of its economy to escape the dependence on energy imports and to reposition itself within the international context. Startups do play a key role in this field, and 2/3 of all startups are already in the energy sector in Germany, and they are green. We come back to the green startups a little bit later with our experts, and almost 1/3 are contributing specifically and actively to the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which I think is a very important thing to know. In general, no doubt about that, the impact of sustainability has well and truly hit the European startup system, European startup ecosystem, if you'd like to, and already many countries on the continent are relying on this innovative capacity of startups to address climate change, and of course by this challenge political decisions of the day. I did some research yesterday, and Massimo, correct me if I'm wrong. It's very tricky to get numbers, how many startups there are per year in Europe. 26,000 was the number given, and globally it said it's 100 million. So this is a real creative and pushing force in any economy. Our talk today will present initiatives, research projects, research on the numbers and on the field startups are working in, and yeah, give us more an idea of this really vivid landscape. We had unfortunately also invited someone, an expert of an all-female startup in Hamburg, but she couldn't make it this morning, unfortunately. It's a male expert group only. So by now, I will go strictly to the alphabet and introduce our experts. Warm welcome to Professor Dr. Klaus Fichter. He's director of the Borderstep Institute for Innovation and Sustainability, which is some kind of a think tank in Berlin. And he's an adjunct professor for innovation management and sustainability at the University of Oldenburg, and he will present the results of the Green Startup Monitor 2022 later on. And from Oldenburg as well as Dr. Matthias Hausmann. He is Director Chemistry and Environment, I have to check my papers, of the CEWE Foundation. CEWE is for sure a company almost everybody of us knows. When we go for a quick printing with our mobile phones or with a stick, in a drugstore, and then we have our wonderful snapshots put onto paper. So it's one of the leading companies within Europe with 24 countries where CEWE is active and has more than 3,000 employees. And that, of course, demands for being sustainable, being green, trying to make lots of efforts to make environmentally friendly products. But today, Matthias Hausmann will be with us as one of the lead partners in the EU-funded Scale Up for Sustainability project, which supports university business collaboration for startups. And last but not least, and he will be our first speaker today, is Massimo Privitera, Communications and Policy Coordinator at the European Startup Network, ESN, where they coordinate 31 national European startup associations from Brussels. Massimo holds a master's degree in European economy and business law and has acquired substantial experience in the realm of EU policy, working in Brussels for consultancies and NGOs. At ESN, he is in charge of analyzing the political landscape and relating those to startups and contributing to future policy measures. So Massimo, the floor is open to you. Was I right with the numbers approximately for Europe? And what are the strongest startups in Europe in terms of number, the strongest sectors?
Well, yeah, you were right in terms of numbers, but of course, it's very challenging actually to understand the real numbers, because as I'll say later, there's not a unique definition of startups in Europe, and it's I mean, any national context has its own definition, let's say. When it comes to who are the, let's say, the strongest players, of course, I have to say that we try to advocate for what the Commission is also pursuing, which is innovation cohesion. So it's very important to bring everyone on board. But then when it comes to specific countries, of course, the usual suspects, Germany, France, but also it's often a function of how economically strong the country is. But especially in Eastern Europe and in the Baltic regions, you have countries that are really emerging, like Estonia. It has a very high per capita number of startups per capita, also given the small size of the country and the economy. A small correction, because we recently enlarged our membership. Now we have 35 European members, and we open our membership to non-European countries. So we also have 3 associate countries from outside Europe.
Sorry, who are those who are associated with you from non-European?
We open, yeah, as I said, non-European countries. Now we have Morocco, Ghana, and Canada, because there's, I mean, a strategy within the European Union, but also within ESN, to also connect to ecosystems outside Europe, because, of course, to strengthen each other's position and to understand each other's better, let's say. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying. That's good to know. Thank you.
And I don't know, I could jump into the slides I have, if that's okay with you.
Yes, that's perfect.
Because I would like to. Sorry, I think I have to share my screen here. Please tell me if you see my screen properly. Do you?
I do, yes.
Okay, so of course I was asked to be the first to open the floor, so I thought I would give you an overview of the basis we are currently using to advocate for the strengthening of the European startup ecosystem. And I have to say that at ESN, we don't have a specific focus on green startups, which are maybe the focus of this talk, but of course, green startups still are an important subset of startups within our membership, let's say. We published last year what was called the action plan to make Europe the new global powerhouse for startups, that you can find on our website. And of course, most of those recommendations also apply to green startups, because these are the recommendations that are important for startups in general. And this is an outcome. This is the outcome of an initiative launched by Commissioner Gabriel, gathering ecosystem leaders from around Europe to provide their input for policy in the coming years. And the ambition of the action plan is the growth in the number of unicorns by 10 times in 10 years, which is pretty ambitious, but we think it can be done with the right, let's say, with the right policies. The proposed actions are, the themes are four, and these are definitions and data, because as it was said before, it is very, there's not, let's say, a common definition of startups in Europe, and each ecosystem has its own definition. And when it comes to policy, it is very important to define the target group in order to design policy that is actually beneficial to the target group. And also it's important to have data, as you were mentioning, about how the startup ecosystem is evolving in Europe. Then a second theme is talent, because it is consistently reported by our, let's say, members that one of the bottlenecks they encounter is the lack of well-trained or properly trained in that sector individuals. And I suspect, even though, of course, I don't know it for sure, this is extremely important in the green tech domain, because there you have a combination most often of software, but also hardware in terms of let's say, machines. And so you have the need of craftsmanship, engineering, chemistry, biochemistry, and so on and so forth. So I think this is very important. Then it is highlighted it's important to connect the different ecosystems within national boundaries and across Europe. And you were mentioning before collaboration between university and businesses. So all actors should be actually brought on board to create a very strong ecosystem in which each actor can actually contribute with its specificities to economic prosperity. And finally, there's a strong role to advise member states on their policy drafting for startups, because even though the European Union has leeway when it comes to strengthening the startup ecosystem, many, if not most policies related to incentives and taxation that could actually be very beneficial to startups still fall within the scope of the member states. Then
could I just interrupt with a question?
Yeah, certainly.
As you said, tax incentive for growth, ending tax bias, favoring, and so on. Those are strictly political policy measures. But then on the other hand, you said talent, entrepreneurship, education for youngers, encourage business, female entrepreneurship. Those are all very, I'd say, creative points and aspects you mentioned. Do you think you could, as the association, influence policy makers to also encourage this, like education?
Yes. The idea we discussed recently, for instance, with Commissioner Gabriel, about the idea of extending some programs that are being actually rolled out in Austria, if I remember correctly, by one of our members, that actually is to add to the curriculum some, let's say, some aspects of what it means to become an entrepreneur. This for children and youngsters, and then the children would come up with so with their own entrepreneurial ideas. And even though then in the future they wouldn't want to become entrepreneurs, they they have built, let's say, the mindset, and this kind of program seems to show that actually there's a markedly increased willingness to actually launch a startup or become an entrepreneur. Yes, the problem is that then when it comes to education, some member states more than others are more entrenched in their what they are used to do, but there's certainly a leeway to try to influence that. And it's still a policy choice, even though it's maybe less straightforward than fiscal incentives and taxation, but it's still a political choice that could be discussed with policymakers, because it's very beneficial for everyone, I'd say. Yeah.
Is there any country that is very strong in this, like in very early on, giving incentives to educate their population, like the school children and students, of thinking entrepreneurial?
Well, on this, I wouldn't have a precise answer, because we never actually explored it. But I know, for instance, that this program in Austria is working pretty well, even though of course it's just a pilot project. But I think it's working pretty well. Yeah. May I proceed?
Please.
Okay, so when it comes to, of course, I would like to take a detour on green startups, even though they are not the focus of our association, but I've been thinking about it a bit, and I refer to the Green Startup Monitor, which of course will be presented by a fellow panelist afterwards. But when it comes to the challenges of the green startups, these are the 5 challenges that have been the five most important challenges that have been highlighted. And I like to somehow to stress that the most important one is customer acquisition, so market creation, which is very important. And afterwards, I'll give some hints on how this could be solved. But all in all, to address these challenges, what is really important is to create a strong enabling framework for green innovation and green tech. So how can the enabling framework be actually created? I will refer to a series that I recently watched on YouTube that I really would suggest to watch, which is Venture Capital in the 21st Century by Bill Genway, and he refers to the 3-player games, the 3 players game. The idea is that innovation, and also green innovation, of course, doesn't happen in a vacuum, which it is most often thought, but it's actually the outcome of a strong feedback cycle and strong cooperation between three main actors. And you have on one hand the market, then the financial system, that are usually the usual suspects, and in the, let's say, in the framework, especially the neoclassical economic framework, are considered the 2 main actors when it comes to innovation. But then there's a third actor, which is as important, if not important, at least from my perspective, which is the state. And I'll tell you why all these 3 can actually address the challenges that were highlighted before. So the key ideas behind these frameworks are that the success of venture capital depends on the presence of a mission-driven, economically engaged state. And the fact this highlighting of mission-driven is very important. And there were mentions before of now the war in Ukraine and what this could actually bring about. But this could create a mission. We can discuss it later. Then historically, venture capital investments have been actually very strongly, very beneficial in those sectors in which there's prior investment in research by the state. So, and this happened with the ICT revolution, and this happened with biotech. And it is very important that the state engages before the private sector. Otherwise, the effort might be vain, let's say. Then the role of the state is to fund upstream investments in science, especially in those sectors in which the returns are not foreseeable, which is usually the case at the, let's say, at the technological frontier, and which is really important. Remember the challenges that I mentioned before. The state often enables the commercialization of those innovations at scale, and usually it does it through public procurement. So it is very important that the state invests also downstream in creating a market for these startups so that they can scale and that they can sell commercially to private actors those technologies at a say more decent price. And finally, this politically legitimate mission that it is sad to say, but historically they have often, if not always, been linked to security concerns, and if not outright war, have driven state promotion of technological innovation at an economically relevant scale. So, and I'll conclude, how is this related to climate change? It is related to climate change because, in a way, fighting climate change can be considered as a war without shooting. So it could bring about the benefit of having a legitimate mission to invest on, but it would be a war without destruction. Actually, it would be a very constructive war in building a new future. But I would like to leave you with a consideration, maybe that could be for the panel and for the attendees. Even though the European Green Deal certainly has set a much more positive tone, and this is might be the reason why many green startups now have much more access to funding and capital than before. But I wonder if actually the effort is enough, and if climate change is still a political priority, given everything that's happening around us, be it the pandemic, or now, if not outright war, at least the concern of war in our closest neighborhood. Thanks a lot, and these are my contact details, so feel free to get in touch with me to keep discussing the matter. Thank you. How do I share? Stop share. Okay.
Thank you very much, Massimo, for this insights. You already agreed that if someone is interested, he or she could ask for your presentation, right? For your slides, because I think they were quite significant. I guess your presentation leads immediately to Klaus Fichter, who has really focused on with his team on the Green Startup Monitor 2022, and it's already the 4th edition. So you could tell us how it has developed, and we can see, is it a real important impact for the startup ecosystem, and what are the driving forces for the green startups, and who is the biggest and main player in this field?
Yes.
Floor is open to you, Klaus.
Thank you, Martina. So welcome. Great to be here this morning. Before I present 3 selected findings of our Green Startup Monitor, let me just comment on the relevance of startups and how this relevance has changed within the last 20 years. So that new ventures are important, we know that for more than 100 years. Some economists like Joseph Schumpeter already found that the dynamics in the economy depends on entrepreneurs, and the more dynamic economy gets, and it's getting more dynamic, the more relevant are new ventures. So I think in general, we know that startups are a driver of transformation, of market transformation, etc. But there is a but. I think the pure economic perspective on startups is outdated. So I think this is 20th century use. Nowadays, we face great big challenges like climate change, etc. So I think we need to perceive startups as new actors, which also contribute not just in economic terms, creating jobs, etc., but they also ask to help to find solutions for our pressing challenges like climate change or energy demand, etc. So I think we need a change of perspective from an economic paradigm, which I would say, to a sustainability paradigm, which also asks what are the benefits for the society when we look at startups. So this is a general remark in the beginning.
Could I just interrupt here, because you really gave me the floor for that. What you have said so far, does this imply also that this always goes to a young group of people, a younger generation, or do we have startups all through, especially when it comes to climate change? Is it only youngsters creating startups in this field?
No, I mean, if you look at the statistics, who is starting a new business, we have really a mix. It's a lot of younger people too, being 25, 30, 35, but we also see a lot of experienced serial entrepreneurs, which are 50, 55. And I think we need all of them. So maybe the view that startups are always young people is wrong. It's a mixture, and therefore we see very different kinds of startups, and sometimes it's good to also bring some business experience in the venturing and startup process. So it's more than just young people, definitely. Now, a few words about the Green Startup Monitor, and I apologize, I don't have any slides or something, but I changed my virtual background so that you get an impression. The Green Startup Monitor is focused on Germany, and we collaborate here with the German Startup Association. So it's a big survey every year, and I think the results are relevant not just for Germany, but for Europe or for international trends in general. That's why I think it's also relevant to this international audience here. So I think it's important to understand what we focused on. As Massimo already was saying, there are very different definitions, what startups are, etc. So we refer only to those new ventures which are innovative, which provide new products, services. So that's one key criterion. And a second one is that they are willing to grow and to scale things. That's also an important aspect. And of course, when we talk about green startups, there has to be an environmental or societal benefit from the products, maybe greenhouse gas mitigations or something like that. So it's important to underline that you cannot just do some greenwashing here and saying, oh, we are green. No, we have a closer look at that so that there is a real environmental or societal benefit coming from these innovative and growth-oriented startups. So here are three numbers. One number is, you might assume that green startups, that's a nice small niche with some clean tech technologies, but it's not. It has grown substantially. Nowadays, about almost one third of all startups in Germany are green. So they provide product services which help mitigate, for example, greenhouse gas emissions, which help to improve energy efficiency, which help to implement a circular economy. So it's not a niche anymore. That's my message here. So it's a big group. And I think it might not be the same in all countries, of course, but I'm sure in Scandinavia, probably the number is higher. In other countries, in Central Europe, we have similar numbers. Maybe it's a little less in some other Eastern European countries, but the trend is clear. So there's a clear movement to being green. That's one number. A second number is science and technology and research are very relevant. About 1/3 of all these startups are directly coming out of a university or a research organization. So they do it, the transfer from what we find in research, what we find in new technologies, and implement it. And that's important because here they are knowledge based, and they implement the new knowledge which we have and which we need to tackle the big challenges. And a third figure which I would like to present to you is what is the number of green startups in different sectors. So it's very different. If you look into, for example, the finance sector, it's kind of disappointing that we only have about 20% of all startups actually can be labeled green. So I think there is a big need to improve. Also in the construction area, when it gets to building new energy efficient housing, etc. Also the number is very low, around 20%. So there's a clear deficit. But if you look into the energy sector, so providing green power, etc. So the percentage of green startups, of all startups in the sector, is more than 2/3. So more than 2/3 in the energy sectors provide, for example, smart solutions for energy saving in private homes, which is one topic, Martina, which we can relate later on, which is very important when we talk how can we get independent from gas imports from Russia, for example. I think that startups, green energy startups can play a substantial role here. And politics right now doesn't look at that. So I think we really should focus on that. So I stop here so that we have also some time for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus, a lot. I'd like to come up with a question immediately. As you have said, green startups in the energy sector are the driving force when it comes to real sustainable ideas. And it's a bit provocative. Do you have to have like sustainable and green ideas to be successful as a startup? I wouldn't say like greenwashing, but like, yeah, I'm so green, so please support me, support my finance, so I can get better into the market. Does politics, yeah, puts more attention on them if they have some kind of a green aspect in their companies or startup profile? It's provocative, I know. It's just like, yeah, but
not really, not really. What we label green startups, those startups mostly present themselves as being green. That's the interesting thing. They present solutions. They present products which help to cope with energy efficiency issues, for example, etc. So I think we should not look at what a company says, but what a company provides as products and services and what are the actual impacts are. That's very important. We don't like people making nice image brochures, what great things they. So startups don't tend to do that. So they really focus on the solution. And here we see a clear contributions. I'll give you one additional number when it comes to energy savings. I think in Europe in general, in Germany especially, we need to focus more on how can we save energy quickly and to get energy independent from imports, gas and oil imports from Russia, for example. And our studies clearly show that we can reduce the energy demand in housing by about 20% within 2 or 3 years, just by having smart smart solutions for the steering of the what is it called, for the room climate. And there are great solutions and startups which provide these affordable small investments, so that you can really save energy as a private household. And I think this is a potential which is not looked at presently. And so the solution is not just by startups, but they play a key role in providing energy savings quick. And I think that's always the best approach to avoid using energy and not discussing how we can get alternative energy supplies. So just one example.
But as you said, 2 to 3 years, next winter is coming, and next winter is not 2 to 3 years, but it's like 9 months left. Massimo, do you see a driving force in Brussels to enhance the progress under the current circumstances, to make startups working even more quicker to come up with solutions in this energy sector?
Yes, certainly. And of course, there's a lot of talking about energy independence, but I agree that we shouldn't overlook the contribution of energy efficiency, which is maybe, in certain respect, even more important, because the most sustainable energy you have is the one you don't use. Even because I would like to say a cautionary tale about all this discussion about Ukraine and energy independence, because even though this could be a driving force for sustainability, and there's a strong overlap of the two agenda, let's say, there might be the danger of falling back on dirty sources of energy, because that is the quickest solution for energy independence. So it is really important that the discussion on climate change, on fighting climate change, is not hijacked by other considerations. I mean, those could be functional, but it's a different story. And also, for instance, there are some technological solutions that are very important for fighting climate change, like carbon capture and storage, which don't fit necessarily in this let's say, in all this discussion about energy independence, but they are really important for the last mile solution to climate change. But in a way, I think the tide is changing, and being green, as you mentioned, is becoming a selling point for startups, certainly, because also consumers are slowly actually starting to value that as something they want to buy. So yeah.
Thank you. So last but not least, Matthias Hausmann, now the floor is open to you. Well, many of the startups seem to be so high-scaled, well-researched, I wouldn't say complicated, but when it comes, for example, to energy efficiency or so, it needs a certain background. Does it really need an academic background, or are universities like a breeding ground for that, or an accelerator? And just give us a little bit more an idea about what the project you are being engaged is all about, and maybe coming out to my question, please.
Yeah, I might introduce the project and then try to answer your questions. The project is called Scale Up for Sustainability, and it was, as you already said, an EU-funded project with 3 universities from 3 different countries. Netherlands, Sweden, Linköping was participating, and from Germany it was Oldenburg, which was led by Klaus Fichter, so we know each other. Of course, and 9 companies were engaged in this project. And the project had 2 dimensions. It was a research project. So what did we want to research? At first, we wanted to research starting up and scaling up sustainability ideas together with students as a cooperative framework between, well, a factual company, a real company, and the university in order to also have a benefit for the company. So maybe a brilliant idea or maybe a good business plan or something like that. And the second dimension was to study the industry as a learning space for students. So apart from university, could there be industry involved in order to make students happy to learn something? And I learned that it's called challenge-based learning. It was absolutely new for us. We really enjoyed being part of this project. We had several student groups here. We learned a lot ourselves, how to tackle sustainability issues, how to improve on sustainability problems, how to analyze them on the one hand. And secondly, we had a lot of fun because, of course, the young and the new view on aspects within our company, for instance, gave us the chance to see it through other eyes and to learn about possible improvements. On the other hand, I think students could learn what are the obstacles they will face in a big company when they worked together with us. If you want to really make something more sustainable than it has been. And well, as I said, we had a lot of student projects making business plans for a new ecological CEWE photo book or a local sourcing project, an application, an app which attracts young, sustainable customers. We had a project about mobile phone cases made from ocean plastic, which actually resulted in one of our new products, which is one made from biocompatible and biodegradable plastic in one of our daughter companies. And we already introduced an ecological print. So yeah, it influenced us a lot. And I want to come to your question because you said, what do startups do? And I cannot answer you that from any experience that I have, because I've been here very long in this company, and we started our sustainability movement within the company 12 years ago, which somehow was a startup. And we have new ideas and starting up ideas to improve on sustainability aspects, on how to become a climate neutral company within a shorter time period than momentarily projected. So there's a lot of starting up also in an existing company, which needs to be had and which is carried into a lot by young people and especially young academics. And I think that was your question at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you are based in Oldenburg, German universities do have the image of being a bit slow going and being very bureaucratic. Do you think from your point of view, from Scale Up for Sustainability in the academic field, that there is a change of minds, that universities really do see that they need to be like a breeding spot, accelerator for startup thinking, instead of having great young master students and then aiming for big companies?
Yes, I think it's absolutely the other way. We got to know within this project many professors and many teaching personnel at the university, which is very modern, very encouraging, very well equipped to skip away with what you, I think, meant is some old-fashioned bureaucratic things that you have to do, but try to, within this border of the last criticism that is there, try to really be innovative and ideaful and try out new approaches like they did with us. And so I think it's rather to admit. Also, I think we as the industry participants, as we said, there were 9 companies involved, and they all had fun with it and really liked it. I think it's the students that are the slowing force, but then it's good that we are trying to give them the opportunity and the freedom to develop themselves.
Thank you. Massimo, any comment from your side on that, like for the academic field as accelerator?
Well, I mean, this falls within the discussion of building the ecosystem, and actually we don't only work on policy, we also work on projects, and 2 of the projects that just ended were actually focused on creating enabling framework for collaboration between university, corporates, and startups. So we really think, and as I said before, that universities can be the breeding ground for most of the solutions that we need in society nowadays. And it's important to foster spin-offs from university, but then there's an ongoing discussion on then what is the power balance between the startup has been created as a spin-off from university, how then the rights on the product and the innovation should be actually shared between the two to allow for finance to chip in. But these are, let's say, nitty-gritty questions that are really important, but I would definitely say that universities should play, should play a stronger role. And then within the discussion we're having with Commissioner Gabriel, there's also the idea of bringing together different realities throughout Europe that already have their own, let's say, their own programs that are working very well, but these programs should be maybe exported elsewhere and to let's say to be brought on board also by other universities. So there certainly are universities that are leading the way in Europe, but this should become much more widespread than it is now. And it's very interesting to hear that the slowing force are usually the students. Yeah, maybe this is the case in several countries, and maybe in those countries have less of an entrepreneurial mindset than others. I come from Italy, and I was never personally I was never presented with the idea of building my own startup. I never thought of myself as a very entrepreneurial person, but it's mainly because maybe I was never presented with the prospect. So that doesn't surprise me in a way. It's a bit saddening, but it's something that of course we should work on from an earlier time, let's say from childhood, because it builds on many basic skills that then are honed and fostered while a student grows up, let's say.
This is eagerly picked up by the audience to write on that, an article about that. Klaus, as you have done the Green Startup Monitor now for 4 years, right? Have you seen a change of the mindset or a change in numbers where the green startups come from in terms of not the sector, but as say academic background or someone doing experiments in his or her backyard? Do you see a change in that?
Well, we see one clear trend that we're getting more ventures, more startups which have a clear sustainability mission. So, and you might label them as being green. Yes, so there's an increase in that. That's one change. But we also see that this old, I call it the old division. On the one side, you have the profit-oriented startups. They just want to make money. And on the other side, you have the social startups and the green startups, and they just want to save the world. This is not reality anymore. We have a fast-growing group which want both. They want to be profitable, but at the same time, they want to have a positive societal impact. So this group has slowly is getting the dominant group. So we have what we call a double dividend here. So you have an economic gain for society because they create jobs, etc. But on the other hand, you also have an environmental or social dividend because they help mitigating greenhouse gas emissions or reducing plastics and these kind of things. So this really is a change of saying we want to contribute to the sustainable development goals with entrepreneurial means. And that's important. So they are quite mission oriented, but not only to have the impact side, but also to be economically successful. So this is a real trend which we also see in other countries. And let me add one point to the discussion you had on the role of universities and our university in Germany, maybe also in other countries, too bureaucratic to really support an entrepreneurial spirit. I think we have seen a tremendous change within the last 20 years that universities and also research organizations get more entrepreneurial when it comes to entrepreneurship education, when it comes to transfer. So this is a clear trend. And I think also German universities are quite entrepreneurial nowadays. But what still is lacking, and that refers a little bit to one questions in the chat.
Exactly, yes, you're immediate. Yeah, just go ahead and answer the question.
Yes,
so do we need that to
we
change?
need some kind of structural change in university to promote this kind of ventures, green ventures, sustainable ventures. I think yes, because there's a kind of it's kind of two separate fields. So on the one hand, universities want to be entrepreneurial, we see that. And on the other hand, they want to be sustainable. This has to also be quite a movement, but these two have not been connected yet. And in recent years, we see a closer connection to be an entrepreneurial, sustainable university. But this is there's still structural change needed. And I think politics needs to play a key role in demanding that also from the universities, not just to support startups and transfer, but to make it a clear criterion that these solutions have to also contribute to our grand challenges, be it climate change or others. And I think this is lacking. So here we still have something to change.
So that is also motivation that has to come from politics and not only money coming from the Ministry of Finance. Okay, got it. As unfortunately, we do not have the representative of the all-female startup this morning with us. Klaus and Massimo, this question goes directly to both of you and later on also to Matthias. Do you see a shift in startups being, and I'm not only talking about green startups, but startups being taken into the hands of female entrepreneurs? Are they good in that, or what is the percentage? Do they make a change in the ecosystem of startups? Klaus, go.
Yes, they make a change. And before I give you the numbers, the percentage of female entrepreneurs in startups, let me say that there are quite a few studies investigating whether startups are more successful if they have female entrepreneurs in the team. And yes, this is the case. So a mixed team, mostly male and female, is quite valuable to be economically successful, but also to consider the sustainability issues. So I think there are good reasons to have a mix in the startup team. And here are the numbers. So in Germany, 16% of all startup entrepreneurs are female, 16. So that's still a quite limited number. With the green startups, the percentage is slightly higher. It's 20%. Well, still not a big number. It's slowly growing, but for various reasons, we probably don't have the time to go into that. It's only slowly increasing, but it's increasing.
It perceived from your studies, Massimo, you have all those countries, 35 by now.
Well, it's of course it's very varied when it comes to the specific national context. But if I go back to the European Startup Monitor that we published for 2019-2020, I don't remember unfortunately what is the figure for the most recent one, but I have and I see that for that monitor, only 8% of the startups are funded by an all-female funding team, and 25% are funded by a mixed team. So I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be an all-female funded team necessarily, but I mean 25%, not bad, but should be better. And of course, there's a big case for bringing female entrepreneurs on board. I mean, we are missing out on a lot of human capital that should be exploited. Then why it's the case, of course, as it was mentioned, it's a long story. It's also a matter of civic rights. It's a matter of what's the role of women in society, how is it perceived. So I would imagine, I don't know, that most progressive countries, when it comes to women on all aspects, are maybe also those that have a higher proportion of female entrepreneurs. I would be surprised if it's not the case. So but still, there's still a long way to go. Maybe more role models and more specific targeting maybe.
You're running out of time, but the same question goes to Matthias. As you said, you had lots of fun with great projects, but still the students are reluctant to be that active. What was the mix of female and male academics going for a startup experiment?
It was rather equilibrium. So it's a 50-50 mixture in the teams we had here. So we cannot say that it's not all female. But I must admit, after 30 years of industrial experience now, I'm really getting a little bit impatient concerning female contribution into economy. And I would definitely propose a 50% female quota on leading positions, and would love to encourage that however I can. So I think there's not enough contribution still from the female side, and I don't know well, there are many reasons, we can assume many reasons, but I think we should get impatient.
Thanks a lot. That's a very a strong contribution. Thank you very much, Matthias, for this. So we have to wrap up. It's already 12 o'clock, but still, of course, Ukraine and all the neighboring countries are highly affected at the moment by the war. But I've seen in the internet that there's so much countries with their startups reaching out to Ukraine. Do you think, Massimo and Klaus, in this Massimo going first and then Klaus as a short question, what is on the mind to help those startups still flourish under the circumstances, or are you reaching out to them?
Well,
offer them,
yes. We try to reach out to our Ukrainian member, but of course it's difficult given the situation. But on our website, if you're interested, we are summing up all the initiatives that have been taken, put in place by both our national members. So of course they're also summarizing all the let's say the support measures that have been taken, put in place by governments, by other corporates. So there's really a lot of solidarity to welcome startups, for instance, who would like to keep leading their own venture from I'd say from abroad, so providing them with spaces, providing them with financial resources, and so on and so forth. Of course, it is important not to give the impression that we are talent picking, because everyone is in need. This is really important. But of course, one gives what one has. I mean, so from the startup community, of course, you would expect that the help that they can provide goes to everyone, but specifically to startups. But on our website, we are, let's say, summarizing all the measures. There's a lot of let's say solidarity shown. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Maybe you can, while Klaus is having the last word, type up your email address in the homepage in the chat. Klaus, your opinion on that.
Yes, so I think startups are entrepreneurial, so that's why a lot of them also take initiatives nowadays in helping refugees, etc. So I think that this is one direct contribution of not, of course, all of the startups, but at least some of them, social startups especially. But I think the role of startups in contributing to some kind of a solution in regard to the Ukraine war is in one way maybe direct, but there's also indirect, because I think that startups, as I mentioned earlier, for example, energy startups, they can contribute services, products which help on the climate agenda on one hand, mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, but on the other hand, there are solutions which help us to get energy independent. And in a way, I think that's also a contribution in this conflict to reduce the power base of Vladimir Putin by these kind of innovative solutions by startups. So there's direct and indirect solutions, and I think the startup scene is playing an important role in that.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much to our experts for tuning in and having an hour with us, taking your spare time. All the best to Brussels, Oldenburg, and to Berlin. Thank you for our audience of tuning in. Next Thursday, we will resume with another climate talk on mobility. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us today. Stay healthy and hope to see you soon again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.